COVID helped the Amazon business up, boosted it up. I was making whatever it was, like 100K a month in profit in the Amazon business. And then in the course business, it was after scaling up, it's like about the same. And so I just had more money than I knew what to do with.
Right. Myles Dunphy, the artist formerly known as Nomad Millionaire. Do you still go by that?
Just call me Myles. I mean, no, not really.
Did you ever go by that in public? I guess not.
The only reason why I don't still have that name is because it makes me feel awkward when people recognize me, or when I have to share my channel in public around people like that I actually meet versus the sort of faceless talking to a camera kind of anonymous aspect of YouTube.
Were you, when you picked that name, were you already a millionaire?
It was aspirational for a short period of time, but it was like within reach. And so I was like, this is great as a personal thing for me to try and grow into that name.
Yeah.
And I was already nomadic. Yeah. It wasn't a long period of time.
I like it. It was good. It caught the eye in the Amazon space for sure. I want to start with something which I didn't tell you before this interview, which is cool.
Okay.
A brief intro, actually. Myles Dunphy, for our viewers, a lot of you guys are going to know who he is, but the first Amazon YouTuber I ever watched in my life. I started Amazon just over 3 years ago. On the 28th of July, 2020, I DM'd you on Instagram. A cold DM, here it is. Just to ask for some advice, and said that I'd watched your video and we'd launched some products and it was going well, and asked you a question about inventory limits, which is so boring. Today is the 28th of July, 2023. Didn't believe in fate, but that is weird. That is weird. I was impressed with that.
Wow. That's mate. I can't remember exactly what I said in response to that DM, but I remember, if not in that first instance that we talked, I remember being really impressed by you guys.
Oh, really?
Even from that cold outreach, because I think at the time I would have been receiving, a fair quantity of messages, but something you'd worked, because here we are.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had like a bit of a hit list of who we wanted to speak to right at the start, but it's funny now because we now get DMs like this. I asked you a question about inventory limits, and now we get these kind of questions. I like trying to help you all we can, but looking back, when you get loads of DMs, it's hard to get such minuscule questions. You're almost like, no, I book a call or maybe take a course or something. But
like you want to help, but you are limited, and so you have to apply some sort of filtering to
exactly
who you can actually.
I think it's good if they've started already. I feel like we have to explain we've taken action on something you did, and then what's the next step, which I think some people ask questions and don't act on it, and then they ask you more questions, and then it's a bit more difficult to want to help them.
And I mean, maybe this is a detour of like we were saying just off air, like how much of a valuable skill and I think nuanced skill it is to be able to develop these relationships with someone who is ahead of you, or some sort of mentor or role model type figure from having nothing, like the cold outreach. You have to do it somehow.
Yeah, it's skill. It's skill. I think it's a necessary skill especially if you want to get into like YouTube and this realm, I think. But I think a lot of people want mentors, but maybe they don't know why they need the mentor. I think they just want to feel like they want to attach themselves to someone who's ahead of them. I feel like, taking actions feels like the biggest. When people do it to us and they come back and say we did it and it worked, what's next? Then way more inclined to help them out. I want to jump back to like a bit of an intro for yourself. Your kind of, I don't know, a 5 minute or 1 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute summary of your Amazon story. We're going to jump to Amazon. We're going to go some lifestyle stuff as well. But can we go back to when you started Amazon, and can you give us a bit of a timeline of when you started to when you left the space?
My Amazon journey.
Yeah.
Okay. So I started selling for about 5 years, and looking back now, I have a very different perspective to how I looked at things during this journey, which is maybe something else interesting to talk about. Started at the end of 2016, and we're in Panama City right now. But my journey starting on Amazon actually was really tied into the nomad aspect. So as I was starting, I had moved to Colombia at the same time, so I'd become a nomad finally.
Right.
And that was the first year, and it worked out really well for me from the start. And that's the aspect where I look back, I'm like, that could really have gone badly in different ways. There are a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges, but
you didn't go to Colombia with the idea to start Amazon, or you?
I went as I was leaving Australia and selling all of my stuff. I was packing the samples into my backpack.
Oh wow!
There were steel cups that I had. I had glass as well, but I didn't take them because they would have just gotten broken. Yeah, I was taking samples because I had to do photography, and I was like right in the middle of launching my first products as I was leaving Australia.
And you were your background engineer, right?
Originally a mining engineer, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I worked in that. So I actually, I'm not sure if you followed this path, but I followed what everybody else around me was doing, which was just to join the middle class lifestyle, which is you get as good of a formal education as you possibly can. So whether that's just going to high school and then going to university or college, getting a degree, and then getting a job based on that degree, and then that's kind of it. That's where a lot of people's stories kind of end, I guess. But that was not a particularly fulfilling pathway for me. So I fell out of it.
How did you find Amazon FBA from that world?
I was deeply unsatisfied in that pathway, deeply. And it's interesting. I think different people's stories, it's like the more successful the result or the more interesting the end of the story is. I feel like at the start, the bigger the low or the deeper the low has to be. And I was at a pretty low point in my career, as personally rather. And I just knew that I had to make a change. I wanted to travel. I wanted to become nomadic and have the ability to do that. And you need money to do that. This funny thing, money. And so I wanted to know how to make money, and I wanted to do it online so I could be a nomad. So I went to Google and I typed in how to make money online.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Classic.
The rest is history.
That was you learning from, did you learn from YouTube videos, or how did you get your start?
Well, it's funny. I mean, this was a long time ago. So you came into this journey a couple of years after me, and maybe this is an off-air topic, or maybe we can talk about it in this conversation. But when I started, 2016, 2017, there were a few of what we shall now call fake gurus.
Yeah.
And there wasn't too much else. There was Jungle Scout, actually.
Yeah.
I didn't buy a course when I started. I did follow just the free info that Jungle Scout had, because obviously they weren't selling a course, they were selling the software. But I didn't have a specific mentor or someone that I followed.
And in a rapid fire kind of 5 years, what was the growth from year one, if you can remember, year 1, 2, 3 exit?
Yeah. And I had to think about this because otherwise I would not be able to tell you numbers. I had to go back and review. First year was about $1 million. It took us not us, it took me just over 12 months for the first $1 million.
You made a video on that, right? On YouTube, your first ever.
I think that was my first.
Yeah.
So the first year was about $1 million. The second year was about $2 million. So doubled. And then in the second year, and we will talk about this, I believe, I started sailing. And so that's when I sort of was putting things in the 4-hour work week, the autopilot mode, and I was building towards that. So then that was 2018, from year 2 to year 3, it was 2 million again, maybe from 2 to 2.6 million, something like that. Like it was increasing, but it was nowhere near the growth that I guess if I'd been in growth mode, maybe I could have achieved. Then COVID, and we went from 2 point something to 4-ish. Right. And then the final year, it went from 4 to, it was growing as we sold it, and it went maybe like 8.
Wow.
Something like that.
You doubled in the last year.
Yeah. So looking back every year, except for the year where I was saying, okay, the 4-hour week, it's the 4-hour work week time, was like 50 to 100%.
So the exit was 2021.
Yes.
I think I watched your videos from 2020. Actually, I was reading back through the messages the other day, and I was like, I made the MD saying congrats on the growth. I think I must have seen you go from, I think you used to see your shopkeeper a lot, and I'd watch your videos. I think there was a time tracking video that me and Alex watched before, which I know you were like super into tracking your hourly rate and things. And you had shopkeeper on. So we use shopkeeper as well now from you. I think you probably get affiliate money from us still. I don't know if you were one, but the start of the video, and it's like 20-minute video, and you went back to your shopkeeper, and you just jumped up like, I don't know, 15, 20 units. And it honestly blew our mind. We were like, this guy is just pretty bit of cash. We can't believe it. But it's funny now, because when we first got it, shopkeeper, by the way, guys, is this like tool that we track sales with, and it can make a ka-ching sound, right, when you get a sale. When we first had it, me and Alex used to sit working at his house in Barcelona. We'd leave it on all day, and it would go off, and we'd be like, yes, another one. After a while, we're like, it gets a bit annoying sometimes. Like, now I'm gonna have to close it all the time. It's funny how your mindset changes with that. But
we were talking off air about this, but for me, that sort of ka-ching and things like that, those things that give you this dopamine response, this short-term dopamine response, it's really dangerous for me. So I would have turned that off in that video. I had to do things like delete. I didn't have the Seller Central app on my phone at all. Just had to be completely disconnected from that towards the end. At the start, absolutely. I was like, oh my God, every sale. Like,
yeah. Oh, it's so addictive. And I feel like when we started out as well, you're like autopilot, refresh on Seller Central. I try not to check it now as much as like, but then we launch a new product, then I'm back on it again, like non-stop. It's difficult to get away from it. So I kind of want to go to the Amazon, the growth, which is insane, and the fact that you stayed solely 100% on Amazon, right? You didn't go outside of it,
right?
If you jump state to year one, over $1 million first year, right? That's crazy. Did you, with the product you chose and the niche you went into, was that a clear path that you saw, or was that much bigger growth than you anticipated?
Everything was much bigger than I anticipated.
Right.
None of this was planned.
Right. Okay.
Up until and including us being here today, none of any of this has ever been planned. No, it's been a series of small incremental steps.
Yeah.
Looking back with hindsight, now I actually implement that deliberately, which is this sort of two-phase mode of doing things, or strategy, whether you're making plans or you're executing, is like that. The future is so unclear. It's so uncertain. So much can change and go wrong, like COVID, for example. Hey, COVID was a massive boost for my business and for e-commerce in general, but you're not going to make plans before COVID happens that, oh, just wait, like there'll be this massive pandemic, this world-changing event, and that's going to be really great for this type of business, so I'll go into that. But what you do is try different things and then make sure that you're in a good spot such that when these things happen, they give you good luck. It's like, be in the right spot, increase your luck surface area such that good luck, when good luck shines, it shines on you.
Yeah.
And I think in hindsight, looking back at that pathway, none of it was planned past a year or two. 1 year, actually. We did rolling 12-month plans. But each year, each 12 months got us somewhere in a better position where when this thing happens or this changes, we will be in a better position rather than a worse position. And then that compounds.
Yeah. Did you, when you got to that, you kind of first started seeing it works with the first product, was that literally launched and then immediately it took off? Or was it like a couple of months, a bit of iterations? Or
I launched 5 products to start.
At once?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's staggered by a couple of months. And that's what I said. So some of the products that I hadn't launched yet, I was packing into my backpack as I was getting on that plane. But that was also part of that process, which was, I don't know anything about Amazon. I didn't buy a course. I didn't have someone in my life who I actually could look at and be like, this guy's doing it and he's succeeding. There was no one that I knew and trusted. And so for me, it was an uncertain thing. It was like a maybe. This could happen, but I don't know whether it will.
Right.
And so I just wanted to get as much of an exposure to different, practically speaking, in different niches, different types of products, because I didn't know which one would work. And
were they all related under one brand? Or?
So I followed a very like by numbers research process at the start. And funnily enough, it happened that all 5 of those products ended up being, if not cups, they were like receptacles for holding things. Right. So very like either cups or something very similar to a cup, of different types and like targeting different drinks, let's say.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you? So just you're fully open about the brand, right?
Now, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it was Elixir, right?
Elixir glassware. So we actually sold 2, and
right.
Both of those came from those first 5 products. Elixir was a wine glass brand, primarily wine.
Yeah.
And some coffee. And we also had stainless steel cups, which is True Blue steel.
Right.
But that, again, this was not planned. Like at the start and for the first 2 years, True Blue steel was actually making more money than Elixir was. And then in the end, the final valuation or the valuation split was like 95% to 5%. I had no way of knowing that at the start.
Yeah, of course. Were you, I think I know the answer to this, you weren't like a wine aficionado or a drink aficionado, a receptacle. You just found a gap in the market. You saw an opportunity.
It was purely pragmatic, yeah.
Because we found a lot of people in the space say, find a hobby and you're going to be way more likely to succeed if it's a product you're passionate about, which to be fair is probably true to a degree, but I think my opinion is a lot of people are passionate about the same shit. So it's kind of hard to launch like a fitness brand nowadays, as opposed to if you find an opportunity, you can become passionate about the opportunity and then learn more about that market and then scale. Is that the view you had going in, or did you have products in mind that you wanted to do, but the numbers didn't work out, or was it purely data driven?
Everything comes back to me searching on Google for how to make money online. That was the arc of my Amazon journey, was how to make money online.
I said wine glasses.
It was not how to monetize my passion online. It was not how to do something I love online. It was how to make money online. So everything was, will this make me money? And how you profit, not revenue. So, what's the breakdown of that? It's supply versus demand. So you're looking for something that has, it's a market that's undersupplied, but there's demand for it. Or if you're looking in the future, you think, the market will have this supply-demand mismatch.
What was it underserved? Because I feel like glasses are everywhere. Like, obviously they're everywhere, but I feel like it's pretty competitive, right? How did you see an opportunity there?
I can attribute a lot of my success from early on. I don't know how many niches this still works in. It was literally just little marketing hacks.
Right.
Again, we were speaking previously about YouTube and the importance of the title and the thumbnail. And the title and the thumbnail is the equivalent of packaging. Or, sorry, not packaging, not the product packaging. It's the equivalent of your main listing image and I guess reviews and the title. And as we said around YouTube, that's the 50%.
Yeah.
And on Amazon, it's close to 50%.
Yeah.
Those three things. And so if you can optimize for them, or see a way which you could optimize in this niche, in this little space in Amazon that isn't being done, then you can capture a much larger share than you would otherwise get to.
And what, it was underserved in terms of the quality was super low. Was it because you went in, you were like a premium position brand, right?
Yeah, not super expensive, not the top, but
yeah,
upper.
But then it felt like it was worth it for the customer. You could tell kind of side by side.
Well, I mean, this goes into a bit of psychology of like, why are you buying? So wine glasses was our most profitable, the sort of like sub brand, because we were also selling coffee glasses, coffee mugs, and some other things. Wine was the one thing where it's much more of an experience, where you buy wine glasses and it's not just you need something to pour wine into. But there's much more feeling associated with it. And so even though we didn't do any direct to customer or much in the way or anything in the way of sort of taking this feeling, this marketing off Amazon or really like connecting to the customer, you can still do that in a very basic way on Amazon. Our way literally was maybe like bring it up on screen, but black packaging, like luxury kind of looking packaging.
Black and gold, was it?
Black and black.
All right.
Like black and white, I think. Okay.
And was that a tactic you deployed from day one then? That was were those first launches? No.
So I think I learned that with True Blue Steel. I mean, it's funny doing these things and you don't think that it can make such a big financial difference until you go, okay, so here are these stainless steel cups and everyone else is packaging them in the way that they should be packaged, which is a rectangle, 4 cups like aligned next to each other.
Yeah.
And they're not using the packaging in the marketing, like the main listing image. So I just used it was a brown paper cardboard, so that's not too much of a standout. But then I changed the orientation of the box such that instead of being like this, it was actually like this, so that when you were scanning, your eyes scanning between all the different listings, that shape stood out.
Yeah.
But that was like that was multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars of profit in like the first year with one product.
Wow. Because when we found out what you sold, we thought it was, I'll rewind a little bit. We used to sell wallets, men's wallets. And one of the appeals was everything's almost the exact same size. So it's super like, it's like golden bit of, you can charge a premium price, super cheap to ship. Shipping's the same for every unit almost. And you can do different variations of it. We thought you'd applied that logic to it because it was so scalable, because you could just, it's very easy to work out the math with the niche we're in now, which we're not public about yet, but we have all different shapes and sizes of products. So it's a bit of a logistical headache, which we don't mind now because it puts a lot of people off.
Yes.
But we thought that was a considered decision, but it wasn't, was it? I don't think you said before.
Well, I mean, what you just described, I would now be actively looking for those things. Where are the areas in which you have either a skill set, well, definitely a skill set, or the ability to learn the skill set that effectively blocks other people from entering? So if that's you handling extra complexity in the logistics side, and I think Amazon is a very logistical game, a lot of it's numerical analysis and optimization and good forecasting, things like that. If that's the thing the challenge that you want to overcome to then create a wall or a barrier that'll stop other people from coming in, then be good at that and do it. Because it's not about, if everything's easy, well, it's easy for the next person who's coming behind you. And the numbers are all, you know, if not exactly sort of to the dollar, everyone can see more or less what those products are making on Amazon. So there's no hiding from that. So yeah, there's something else that stops people.
There's no moat, is there? You kind of just, if it's easy, people like low hanging fruit, they're going to come after you and more competition. So with your scale, so you got to 1.2 million just yourself, right? You had no, were VAs a popular thing back in 2016? Was it a buzzword then?
I had hired a VA for the first time from the Philippines on a side hustle that I was doing, a secondhand car dealership, pardon me. So I'd hired one before to do admin / accounting stuff.
This is pre-leaving Australia.
This is a long time ago. And that business failed horribly, but I learned quite a few skills from doing that. So I already knew what it was like to hire a VA. And I actually had her, it was the same girl, she was working, she's just doing not much for me at that point in time.
And then, so when you got to 1.2 million year one, when did you decide to kind of, make your first proper hire and kind of really systemize it? At what level was that? Was that year one, year two?
So this is where I was thinking, I had to think more than a year ahead. Was I think the only time that I really did, which was that I wanted to go sailing. I wanted to go sailing with a buddy, and that was like a trip of a lifetime, an adventure of a lifetime. And I knew, or like correctly guessed, that you don't even have internet connection all the time. And you just, you're not, if the business is just you working on the business, even if it's relatively hands off, which I would argue that Amazon can be, but isn't really, it shouldn't be. It should be pretty hands on for someone to manage. But that's just not sustainable. Like if it's just me and I go on this boat and then there's just no internet half the time, like that business is falling apart. Yeah. So that was the key need, was I want to do this. I wanted to make my own line so that I could do this, which was to live an adventurous life and go do cool shit basically. And so the gap there is, okay, well, I've got this business, maybe it's making a lot of money, but then how do you make that sustainable? How do you make that actually into some sort of solid foundation with a structure? So the need there was someone who could actually be connected on a day-to-day basis and not just be connected or like do a VA type role, but actually be able to react to things and ideally continue growing the business while I'm offline.
So were you looking for not a mini you, but yourself again, basically? Someone like a person who's multi-skilled and can kind of handle all assets of the business?
I think the correct word to describe this is an apprenticeship. So that is someone who's going to engage in a long-term learning process to eventually at some point obtain mastery. Because if you're the master of your Amazon business, then you're looking for someone who has the potential to reach that point and become the master of your Amazon business while you still maintain the equity ownership, ideally.
So before you went on the sailing trip, you made the hire?
Let me think of the timelines. Yeah, so this was a multi-year process. So it was about a year beforehand that I hired the first person who did not work out. So I failed with that one. It was a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And then I honestly can't remember right now. I think it was less than a year, maybe like 6 to 8 months before I went to Florida and started looking for a boat. So there was definitely an advanced preparation before that ball. So
okay,
it was like a prerequisite. Like I'm not getting on a boat. I'm not leaving shore and going to the Caribbean until I have something working, because I don't want this to fall apart.
Okay. And so we've actually done a podcast, which you guys can go watch, with Michael, who is Miles's right-hand man and star employee, I suppose now. Definitely go watch it. It's super interesting. But the way I kind of want to get into how you found him, because it wasn't a traditional method, I don't think. And then how you handed over the reins over kind of how long that took.
Right. So first of all, he found me. I didn't find him. It was I was looking for the first guy that I hired who then didn't work out. And so Michael was actually the later replacement for him. And it was interesting because, so I was hiring for the first apprenticeship position, and funny, going back to, how you started this conversation was your sort of cold outreach to me. It was Michael's cold outreach, technically not cold outreach, but the way in which he actually said, he said he wasn't eligible for the position, which I actually really liked. Maybe it was like reverse psychology. He got me like that, hooked me in. And so he didn't apply for the position. It wasn't like I'm not eligible, but hire me anyway type deal. But we got talking, and I think I could see some kind of potential in him. I also could recognize our personalities were pretty similar. And I mean, this is just the way that things happen with him and I. So I wouldn't necessarily take too many lessons from this specifically, where he and I have the same personality, the same style of thinking. Whereas oftentimes with business partnerships, you actually want complementary styles of thinking. But anyway, in this case, he was like literally just like a younger version of me. Yeah. And I could sort of see that from like the...
You also look a little bit similar as well, I'll be honest.
Pardon?
You have a couple of similar, like, you look a little bit the same as well, I'd say.
It's funny.
Similar features.
So, I mean, we're in Panama now, and he came to Costa Rica for my birthday. And so he met all my close friends there at my birthday gathering. And I don't know who started saying it. I think it might have been my sister. I was like, hey, you guys look alike. And then by the end, it was like, oh my God, it's Myles and Myles. But yeah, so that was it. We met each other through Reddit. And then when the first guy didn't work out, it wasn't just that guy. It was also the way that I'd set up the position. It was a learning process, sort of like almost like the trial run. Michael was the next guy available. And if you're looking for specific things that I had to do differently to actually make that work where it didn't work with the first position, the first time that I hired, I had to pay more and be more committed to that position, to hiring someone and basically giving them or incentivizing them in a better way than I had done the first time around. So in very simple terms, more money and basically risking more from my end. Because with the first position, it was literally an apprenticeship where, generally they don't pay much or at all. So what I wanted to do was a profit share. It was like, hey, you come on board, I'll teach you a lot, I'll provide the capital, but I'm not going to pay you a salary, I'm going to pay you a share of the profits. But with Michael's case, and this is probably what I'd recommend, is just if you decide that that's sort of the pathway you want to go down, you want to try and get someone in to work for you, pay them well up front. Take that risk that you could pay somebody well for a couple of months and it could, that could be wasted money. That's the approach that worked better.
How long, like handing over the reins of the business and then you kind of feeling fully confident, how long did that take?
It was a long process. And yeah, we could talk more about this off air as well, but I don't know if it was the best way to have done things. I actually think a lot, and Michael and I have talked about this, where it could have gone wrong in so many ways. And it's almost like the result that we got together where, in the end, we're both financially really well. We did really well financially out of it. We're also really close friends now. I've helped him in the business that he's doing right now. It's almost like the dream outcome. Like it could have fallen off and gone so many different, gone wrong in so many different ways. The process to getting him into that position, to not just having the 4-hour work week, because I achieved the 4-hour work week in that first year of sailing. So that first level, which is where he was managing the business. But I remember I told you the business didn't grow much that year. We grew a little bit, 20% or something, 15, 20% around there. But it felt shaky and I didn't feel completely secure with the business as it was. And so that was after, 8 months, nearly a year. So that was not complete by then, depending on what sort of goal he wanted to reach. But again, I was after not just being able to distance myself and be disconnected when I was on the sailboat. We were, doing a crossing. We had no internet for 4 days or a week or whatever the period is. The things aren't going to fall apart. The wheels aren't literally just going to fall off and I'm going to come back and like there's nothing left. But actually that business would grow without my input, at least not on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis or a month-to-month basis. That was about a 2-year process, more or less.
Okay.
And there was a particular moment where I realized that, and I have all of this written down. I was reviewing it the other day of like where I could finally see that he had started as, he had one product selling on Amazon, and there's nothing, you're just sort of doing work when you have one product selling on Amazon. Like you can take time off, you can, you can mess around with Seller Central and stuff, but like there's no structure to it really because it's just one product. It's
reactive, isn't it?
It's reactive, exactly. And so he came in at that level. Then we took him to the next level of like, okay, well, actually there's these moving pieces and you've got to keep these like routines going. That took, 3 to 6 months. But then to get to the point where actually this is a business, we have multiple brands, we have all of these different things we could do. I think you are going to ask me about direct to consumer versus staying on Amazon, and that sort of strategic level of thinking, which really is something that if you make this decision today, you don't see the effects in the next couple of months. You might see them maybe in 3 to 6 months, but maybe you're actually thinking about a 12-month or a 2-year time frame. That level of thinking, to take that on board and to actually not only to be responsible for making those decisions, but to actually make the decisions well, that's really where the owner's mindset comes in. And after about, it was like a 2-year process, he was now able to do things like that, like really start seeing the thing as a machine and actually then tuning the machine, or in other terms, working on the machine and improving the machine instead of just being inside it.
Yeah.
That was the key distinction.
It's something we recognized in our business. Like I'm bad for that. I in the weeds, and I kind of just gave myself a job, and the more we scaled, there's more of a job, more hours. Yeah, it is more of a job. And we actually, Michael did a module in our Amazon course, and it's incredible. Then now we're a member, his new business. We pay for that. We're part of it, and it's the way he thinks. If you two are the most system and processes driven people we've ever met and ever spoken to, especially not that I've met lots of people that I chat about this kind of thing with, but it's such a great skill, and there's some really simple things in his new business, in the kind of the course, some simple kind of exercises you go through about being an operator or an owner. And I did it, and I read kind of the summary of what an operator is versus an owner, and I was like, this is literally me. This is written on me. But I mean, he kind of came in. It sounded like when you nailed it, and that's what we're really excited about now. We're trying to find our version of that, because it's hard to spin that many plates and to give yourself the headspace to make a really clear decisions, which is the main thing we're excited for. What did you find were the biggest growth levers once you had him on board, and then you got to that year kind of 3 and 4? Other than COVID, what did you find were the biggest levers you pulled to kind of really scale?
First of all, I think having him on board, or having somebody on board in that position versus not having them on board, doesn't necessarily change what the levers would be. I actually want to go back to the style of thinking about things, which we always used. I used it at the start, and then that's what I taught him how to do, which was just to be as much as possible in the owner's chair, seeing things, how things are going. And if you're not sure where your next biggest lever is, because the levers are individual. For example, in your brand, you want to go direct to consumer, direct to customer. For us, we looked at that. That was always there as one of the many levers that we could potentially pull. But the hard part is not pulling the lever. It's choosing which lever is actually the one for you.
Yeah.
And so for us, we worked out that it was actually just to keep things as simple as possible, to have these defined processes such that we could just grow, because we had a big product portfolio. I don't remember the exact number, but it was 30, 40, 50. I can't remember. But the idea was that we would just be able to launch from 30 to 50 to 100. And whether you include each product or each SKU, right, as being independent of marketplace, because we started expanding into Europe versus US. But wherever you're expanding those, whether it's a brand new product that you're launching in, and we had this like production line process for product research, where it was just like exactly the same product with the same supplier. Oh, sorry, the glass design changes, but everything else is exactly the same. And just printing that out, in as many different forms as possible, and then expanding each of those new variations to as many different marketplaces as possible, and then just pumping as much PPC as possible through each of those. And having the processes in place such that when you do that, your capacity as the owner, your mental capacity, which is ultimately the single big lever that you have, is your ability to think and reason and strategize and see what's ahead of you, and choose the right pathway or the right lever, such that with all these processes in place, your capacity is free. And so you can go, okay, this is where we should go today, or this is where we should go in 6 months or 12 months.
Did you find, I think when we spoke to Michael, he mentioned this, where once you pick a lever that you're gonna pull, just ignore the rest. Stop thinking about them and stop thinking to them, and really
exactly.
And how long would you give that kind of, let's say you make a decision and that's this year's strategy, how soon would you review it? Do you wait the 12 months until you kind of really give it thought, or is it a case of you're still tempted by the sexy levers?
I don't know if you do this in your personal life. Again, Michael's similar to me. We're both extreme left brain thinker. So it's extreme structure, extreme order. So I have, I like to plan definitely every day, right, is like thinking, what are you going to do today? But that same planning process, review, sort of journaling, whatever you want to call it, I do that on a monthly basis, more or less on a quarterly basis, and absolutely, like, I spend a lot of time every year. So you've got these rolling checkpoints, basically, where you're checking in to see is everything going as it should be. And I'm talking, first of all, from a personal perspective, as in with your life goals and everything, but that process is exactly the same as what I was doing, what we were doing in the business. It's just that the thing is different and the goal is much more financially focused. So yeah, you can look 12 months ahead, but then every 3 months you're looking back at that plan and going, hey, is this still working? Has a new opportunity opened up while this one is becoming less effective? And if so, maybe now we decide to shift our focus. But if not, just keep going. Like, you don't need to spend too much spend too much time or energy worrying about all the other things that you could be doing, because there's a million things you could be doing.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean,
you just can't do them.
Do you think you and Michael being similar? Obviously, you had a great outcome. You scaled 8-figure exit, incredible result.
Yeah.
Do you think you guys being the same? Is there any part of the business that could have been better if you had been a bit more right side brain?
Yeah, absolutely. So these were the levers available to us for very like analytical, like, let's optimize our supply chain. You know, it's sort of that's us. Like, that was our strong point. But if we'd been more creative thinkers, which neither of us were, or rather sort of open-ended, like maybe more branding, more on the customer psychology basis. And I mean, I understand psychology well from like a direct response marketing, like conversion optimization type way of thinking, but a lever that we never pulled, we always had it as like the third or fourth priority, and we were always doing the first two priorities. So it just stayed there until we sold the business, was to develop a real brand, let's say, and to go not necessarily selling off of Amazon, but developing a more direct relationship with the customer. And I think you mentioned it earlier on, but you know, wine glasses can be something that's incredibly generic, but you can hone in on some aspect of the wine drinking experience, or a particular type of customer who's drinking that wine for a particular reason, you know, a particular desire they're trying to fulfill. You can build a strong brand around that. We just didn't do that. We never followed that pathway.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If we'd been much more creatively minded, our ability to execute on that pathway, that potential lever, probably would have been a lot better. And so maybe instead of being the third or fourth priority, it would have been the first or second. And so we would have actually done it.
So when you came to exit, was that something that you had kind of in the sales pitch for the purchaser? Was it, okay, this can get grown still by doing X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
And that was one of the big ones?
Yeah, absolutely. That specific one was not actually a bigger one, but we had, I don't know if we're moving on to talking about exit now, but that was a key thing for us, both internally for our own mental well-being, because for us, I think sometimes people have exits that go really well. Ours was not. Like, it was kind of it was a longer process than expected. And so psychologically, when you're like, you can see this big number, this big payday, this culmination, like the end of a journey kind of thing, it's really important, really significant personally. It sort of got dragged out and more. And I think you might find maybe that's like actually an average, like it happens to a lot of people when they're selling their business. What really helped was having an actual plan. If the sale didn't work out, we had essentially a BATNA, the best alternative to negotiated agreement, this other pathway that we could take where we could confidently tell ourselves that we'd be able to grow this business and double it and take it to the next level.
So I want to get to the exit. Before I get there though, because your team, so you have Michael running the show, or yourself, Michael, how many people in total do you remember when you came to exit at like 8 million per year? How many people were in your team?
We had one brand or like operations manager and one supply manager. And we had a customer service girl. She was off doing her own thing. I wouldn't call that a full-time position. So basically two full-time.
2 full-time, Michael.
Plus Michael, sorry.
And then you were 1 hour a week or something crazy, weren't you?
Yeah.
You actually were 1 hour a week. I remember seeing a video on this where you tracked.
I've always worked from the very start when I had nobody beneath me and the business was a lot smaller. I've always worked like rhythmically. So I'd go and do work sprints of a month or so, or a couple of months. And those periods of time, the hours go way up. The goal for me, the objective was always to be able to stop working when I wanted to stop working.
Right.
And so to have periods of time, and when I was sailing, it was years. The period of time was like 1.5 years, 2 years, where it was like 4 hours or ideally less per week. For example, though, when we were selling the business, that was mostly on me. So I was doing all of that. I went through that process. We didn't use a broker, so I had to learn a lot of that process for myself to try and get the best outcome possible. So during that period of time, I was not like, oh, I'm only going to work 1 hour a week and like not negotiate, increase the multiple. No, I worked during that period of time.
So four-person team, potentially a 3-person team at 8 million.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. There's not that many businesses that you can do that with, I don't think. That's credit to your systems for sure. Because like there's definitely I said about you guys are left brain thinkers. I think Alex and I are more right side. We're definitely more like we enjoy the branding and the creative side, but then it's a bit more take together on the system side. So hence why I joined Michael's new business to learn a bit better. Okay, yeah. So the exit. So was that always the goal?
Nope.
So it was more like to live off. You lived off the cash from the business as well, because it's very cash intensive FBA, right? So and especially the scale that you're at. Let's do the exit first. Maybe like it's about financing, but you had a number in mind, I presume. I think you documented this on the channel, right? You had a kind of going to 8 figures. Was it a case of COVID boom, all the multiples are going up, let's pull the trigger, or was it a year out from that where you like we're going to sell?
It was going back to the theme earlier. Like none of this was planned from the start at all. Like, and it helps actually to have conversations like this because it gives me an opportunity to think back to my life before all of this happened, and then to really appreciate the change, the process of coming through this journey, and how unexpectedly amazing it's all turned out. Not everything. There's ups and downs, obviously, but if I go and talk back, think about what my 25-year-old self or my 18-year-old self would think to see that that's the journey that's like awaiting this guy.
Your 18-year-old self saw this, they'd be like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Nice. Well done. So in terms of how far out were I thinking, I had actually gone through talks with Thrashio and a couple of others pre-COVID, but it was a completely different space back then. Thrashio, they were brand new. Yeah, when it was 2019 or something. It was like, all of this has happened in such a small period of time. So I'd gone through those talks to see what the business would be worth at that time. And so this was when we were doing 2 million a year, it would have been. And the multiples were, at that time, what were they? 2 to 3, maybe 2 to 4 if you had like a really good business, but 2 to 3 or something like that. And then COVID happened and that really changed. Like I know some people who sold either just before or like just at the start of COVID. And it was clear to me as we were going through this process and just seeing how much of a boost, whether permanent or temporary, that e-commerce was getting, that like you didn't want to sell at that point in time. It's like not on the up like this.
This is Bitcoin 2013.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's ride this train for not as long as possible, because I think it's a separate topic. Maybe the psychology, it's really easy to ride the train for too long. Yeah. And I was conscious of that. And for personal reasons as well, it sort of started to come, a lot of things culminated but financially, the bigger macro picture, the way that the Amazon space was evolving. And then for myself personally, it worked out to be good, like at that point in time to sell, which happened to be a really good time to sell, sort of valuation and like business supplies.
Were you at the peak of the bubble, people say, but were you around that?
Yeah, pretty close to it. Yeah, I didn't know that at the time, but I think as well, it's nice to look back and think about how I was actually thinking about these things. What was the reasoning I was using to justify? Because, I know a lot of people who do wish that they'd sold around about when I sold, and they held on and they rode the train for too long. And now, they just have a lot more work ahead of themselves because maybe their business peaked then or the valuation is
you gotta want to get it back there. It's gonna be stuck in your head, like it can get there again, but it's gonna be so much. Because let's say 2 to 3x was an average multiple. Are you allowed to say what multiple you got in the end?
I can't, but if you do want to dig, I did talk about what I was aiming for on my channel publicly. So, but I can't.
And you hit the goal you wanted to achieve.
Yeah,
that's it. Nice. So going through that process, how long did it take actually?
The exit process?
From when you actually did you get an LOI or how did it work?
Yeah, so I mean, it can all happen quite quickly. I think if I'm remembering correctly, the time frames, it was around about, I could be a little bit off here, but I think April of 2021 was when we sort of went from like, okay, let's do this. Like, let's start actually seeking offers or seeking to speak to the acquirers, the aggregators. And we exited, or we closed the deal in the end of August. So that was a 4 or 5 month process.
Okay.
And that's longer than it should have been because we had issues. I can't talk about the specific issues, but basically the expectations was that it would have been quicker than it ended up being. So that was a bit of a roller coaster during those 4 to 5 months.
Were you still having to, because I know some kind of have earnouts and some people have to stay helping them out for a while. Was it a clean upfront deal? You were gone, or were you still involved with the business post-exit?
So again, I can't go too much into specifics with the deal, but in general, at least the way it was done back then across aggregators, because they did have like a quite well-defined playbook. So there wasn't much difference. I don't know about now whether it's changed much. I know it's evolved a bit. But because an Amazon business is quite this like standalone thing, and because most Amazon businesses are pretty similar, there really wasn't that much in general requirement that the buyers would be expecting for the seller to like to integrate the business into theirs, because that's a playbook for them.
Yeah,
how to do it. So again, not speaking as much for myself specifically, personally, my own experience, because I can't talk about those details, but you wouldn't be expecting too much unless you wanted to. So you could, in the deal process, if you wanted to stay on and get equity or something like that, there is still that flexibility to do that, but it's not necessarily a requirement of selling an Amazon business.
So, classic question, but I feel like you have to ask kind of thing. How did it feel on the day you sold? And did you do anything crazy that day, or was it an average day after you signed?
Yeah, that's a nice question. It was a good day. It was
scale of 1 to 10. Well, how did it rank in your days of your life?
It was not. There was no celebration. There was a deep feeling of calm and peace, because it's something, again, I mean, business is such a psychological, ultimately it's an internal game that we play with ourselves. And the better that we play that game with ourselves, the better we do in business. Like the internal game defines the external game. And it's really in times like that where you have this whole alternate pathway of your life, at least for the next couple of years ahead of you. And then there's another pathway, which is just completely different. So for us, it was sell the business right now. And then what do I do with the rest of my life? Or at least, what am I doing with all this time, this identity of being an entrepreneur, the Amazon guy, having a YouTube channel, blah, 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 versus this other pathway where you just become whoever. Or it's a question mark. And that contrast and the expectations of one or the other versus the sort of what you actually see coming, and how that can change from day to day if you go through this deal process and you don't really know what's going to happen. That, at least for me personally, like really threw me for a loop emotionally. It was very draining. And so to finally get to that day, the closing day, which is when basically the deal is not closed until you receive money in your bank account. It was just a sense of peace of like, okay, that door has closed. This potential future I now know is not happening, and this one is happening. And that's the one that I wanted as well. So it's like the right door open and the right door closed. So I just felt calm.
We said off air, you said something really interesting, that you're not financially motivated. At that point, would you say you were?
Yeah. And this is part of the reason why I'm getting back to YouTube, is just sharing. I think this journey that I've gone through personally is a very valuable journey that I personally wish that somebody could have told me about all this crap that can happen, because it's sort of like, it's the ultimate carrot is this really large sum of money, a life-changing amount of money for most people anyway. And yet receiving, like finally getting to bite onto that carrot doesn't necessarily feel nearly as good as how good you expect it to test. Like it's just this like everyone mind fuck. Yeah. And like honestly, post exit, I don't know if we're going there now, but was one of the most challenging periods of my life in a lot of different ways. We talked again before this conversation about other people who've had a very similar experience, where you reach this culmination, right? This amazing goal, and it becomes maybe a disappointment. I mean, maybe it just feels good, but maybe it's a disappointment. And maybe actually you enter into a dark period in your life, or it's like the problems seem to increase afterwards. It doesn't always happen, but I've heard enough personal experiences from people who I like can see that, and I can see it reflected in my own story to know that it's worth talking about, because we spend a lot of our time and attention and energy, our lives essentially, like the most valuable resource we have, right? Our time. And I don't know whether it's always well directed. In my case, yeah, I wouldn't change much. I would have liked to have understood more what that pathway was. As that door closed and this one opened, it would have been nice to really understand the pain that was actually coming when this door opened.
Do you think it's because most people that Google how to make money online, they're so like financially driven, but then because people don't talk about money openly, I feel like you're not educated on how to be wealthy. It's not a course you can take. Did you seek out any help with how to, I don't mean like wealth management and things. I mean like how to handle having, say, you had an exit, you got a load of free time when you already had a decent amount, not free time, but you had a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour work week when you wanted it. So did you get any help for that? Or is that something you can find?
There were specific things where I should have got more help. I mean, this is a personal sort of flaw of myself, or a weakness, let's call it, for myself personally. And that's one of the reasons why we're here, is because I recognize that maybe that was a weakness for you at some point. But your ability to like reach out and get help and just go and like actually go to other people and go to them openly and not sort of in a pushy way, but realize that somebody else has so much experience and value to offer you. I'm not talking about myself there, but I just mean in general, like I don't do that very well. I tend to keep in this sort of like little closed environment and think that I have to do everything myself. And a lot of that is sort of unconsciously learned behaviors from when I was a child, and we're just seeing how other people were doing things around me and sort of, taking that on automatically. So I Googled what to do after an exit. And that was everything that I learned was from Google, which again, I learned a lot because, there's this Amazon space, and exiting to an aggregator is a well-trodden pathway, but the much more well-trodden pathway is just selling your business. So you can buy a book about it. I mean, lots of books about it, or even like negotiating with aggregators. Sorry, that process, you can go and read about mergers and acquisitions, and you can understand how all of that works. So, like, Google's really good for these things, but the information was there, but I think it's actually the connection with someone who you trust, and that they're actually there in that position, or they've been through that thing, and they're actually listening to what they say. You don't really get that when you just Google something and have the information presented to you.
There's a podcast called My First Million that me and Alex listened to, and Sean and I spoke about a deal doula, and it was like having his friend that had gone through a lot of, like a doula that you have when you're pregnant. Not when you're pregnant. When people are pregnant and they have a doula to help them like coach through the process. Word? Doula. Doula? Doula. I don't know, it's D-U-L-A, D-O-O-L-A, doula, yeah. So Sean spoke about on the podcast where his friend, or a friend of a friend, was not a broker, but had been through a lot of deals. So they just advised through the whole process of when he was selling his business. And he said it was the best thing he ever did for the sale, because like he said, you can try and read books and learn it all yourself and interpret things, but getting a bit of coaching, and it wasn't a broker, because obviously you did it on your own, which that's challenging in itself. Do you think with the broker's help, do you regret doing that at all? Would you think that was the right move?
I definitely don't regret it. I think it depends. So for me, I'm not only a curious person, I really like learning things. So given two options of one, spending money to get somebody to do the thing for me versus me doing the thing, if it's something that I'm curious about the process and how it works, I will tend towards doing it myself and spending that extra effort to learn about it. That satisfies my curiosity. But number two, it's also how you become wealthy, is by learning the skills. Because ultimately, if you don't learn it yourself, then you have to pay someone else. So it's sort of, I like being the producer, the acquirer of knowledge, rather than the sort of outsourcer of knowledge. For example, with going back to Michael just briefly, like I learned that knowledge first, most of it, and then transferred it to him. And, that's the reason why we're having this conversation, is because I didn't just hire someone to do that for me, because I would have paid them so much more money. I spent the time to invest in the knowledge myself. I mean, speaking specifically about the exiting process, depends. If you think you're going to do it more times in your life, if not, yeah, you probably just want to hire that out, outsource it, and pay for a broker to do it all for you. I'd like to think that I'll probably do it again a few times, on both sides as well. That's another thing specifically with the exit process. You can be a seller of a business, or you can be the buyer. It's the same thing. You're just on the opposite side. And so learning the process, you actually learn both. Because if you want to deal well with someone who's on the other side, You got to know how they think, what their incentives are, what their goals are, and what they're aiming for. So I definitely don't regret it. I also saved a lot of money, but it depends. So in my case, with quite generic products on Amazon, it's like a production line process. The sale process rather is very streamlined. So for example, I didn't feel that there wasn't much scope to like negotiate a much higher multiple than what we got.
Right. Okay.
If there was, and you don't think you can negotiate, then yeah, maybe the broker will actually pay itself off. Depends. I would also question that and say, hey, but negotiation is a fundamental skill. So, it depends whether you're willing to take that risk right now with this business sale to learn the negotiation skills and to be confident that actually you are the guy who will get the higher multiple. Depends on the person, I suppose.
You ever thought of becoming a deal doer? You could do that. I think it's I guess different folks, different strokes kind of thing, and where your skill set lies. I think I think you were very good at creating a life for yourself where you had the time to educate yourself on things properly, which I think a lot of people aren't great at. I think time management is a real downfall. I mean, go back to your 4 hour work week. I feel like you did that to the nth degree. And did you kind of read the book and it was just like, wow, this has changed my life? And did you just follow it to the letter?
I never read the book. I never read the 4 hour work week.
What?
I've thought a lot about mentors and role models, particularly recently. Tim Ferriss is one of like my OG mentors. I've never met the guy, but a mentor can be dead or alive. It doesn't matter. It's somebody that you has done what you want to do, and so you learn from them. And so Tim Ferriss is one of my main mentors in a lot of areas. And so I think I'd listened to a lot of podcast episodes, a lot of his show. I've never read the 4 hour work week though.
Have you done any exercises from it that like fear setting and
fear setting? Yes.
Yeah.
And so maybe I think I've probably internalized 80 to 90% of the book without actually reading it.
Yeah.
But
I remember during when we started the business, when I started working with Alex, I think I watched a Tim Ferriss TED talk. I'd actually never really heard of him before, to be honest, and watched that. And I did, off the back of that, I wrote a list that we had a really harsh lockdown in Barcelona. So for 3 months, we couldn't leave the apartment. And I wrote this list about, it's just a list of kind of what I didn't want to forget about myself. And it was things like, I don't know, you are not like everyone else, kind of things like, you're only young once, take risks now, like also kind of, it was kind of, what's what I'm looking for? Basically, it's like it reminded me every day, and I read it every morning. I think I took that from one of his practices, but it really, I kind of not fell into, but really started looking at these kind of self-help people. And I think before I watched those kind of videos and consumed that content, I was a bit like, nah, it's self-helpy, kind of a bit like woo-woo stuff. And then I started doing some of it, and I was like, this has a real effect, and it's important that people do it. But I think most people still think it's just bullshit, I think.
I mean, I went through a phase, my ego got in the way, or maybe I didn't need it for a couple of years, and I really stopped reading self-improvement books and things like that. I definitely think it can be a bit of a rat race, let's say, or sort of you can be on this endless treadmill of just reading self-help books and blah, 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 blah. And so you got to know like when it's actually serving you and when it's not. But for me, specifically right now, in the last couple of months, like where I'm preparing or I'm in the process of making another transition in my life, or rather what am I focusing my time and energy on, and therefore where's my identity going? You got to have help from somewhere if you want to make these changes, because it's just not easy. Like our identity, I mean, everything, it's like the comfort zone. Like we are seeking comfort. We're not seeking to change. By definition, like going outside the comfort zone is painful. It's uncomfortable. And so every instinctual part of you wants to just be inside that comfort zone. So you gotta take whatever help you can get if you want to make the change. If you want to make the change, it's okay to be comfortable at times, but when the time comes that you need to step outside of that, who is helping you to do that? And if you don't have somebody who's holding your hand or coaching you and guiding you through the process, well, you have to seek something like that help and that assistance in some way. So for me, it's books mainly. Again, not the 4 hour work week, but like I read a lot and I try and internalize not just learning knowledge, but also learning mindset help is something that I think when I was younger, I didn't appreciate. how powerful it is. Your mindset is everything. If you don't have the right mindset to do something, you will not do the thing. Or maybe you will actually almost by chance achieve the thing that you're trying to, but you'll sabotage yourself and you'll end up back, losing it all again. Mindset's absolutely key. And I'm saying this because I'm almost speaking to myself right now,
Right.
because I had kind of forgotten that lesson and I've had to re-internalize the importance of it.
Affirmation. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
The list of affirmations. Yeah. I got that in. With that regard, then, you kind of being solo quite a lot, and then you being kind of source of knowledge for people as well. We'd go into the course business and YouTube channel afterwards, but how did you you're at big scale and you hit kind of 8 million revenue. Were you part of a group, or you didn't have a mentor, but did you have like a mastermind that you could lean on? Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, we had a small mastermind of Amazon sellers, and then we all independently, I can't remember who started it, but we all ended up becoming sort of Amazon influencers as well, again, separate pathways. But originally it was started just it was through some Facebook group. I think it was the Helium 10 Facebook group. I honestly don't remember who posted. Someone was just like, hey, I'm at this, this revenue per month, looking to do weekly calls with a couple of people. So it was like 3-4 of us. The exact numbers changed a little bit, but we were talking weekly or bi-weekly for quite a few years. And it was absolutely key. Absolutely.
Are they all exited now, or are they involved still?
Different. I think one might still be actively selling, 1 or 2.
How many people in the group?
Between 3 and 4. So it started with 3, and then became 4, and then sort of went back down to 3 again.
And you think that's something everyone who gets to a certain scale, you think that's a key thing to do, to network with other people with your...
Yeah, I mean, the world is changing so fast. In every context, like sometimes you'll meet people who don't have... I'm thinking about like traditional businesses, and you'll meet some old guy, he's in his 50s or something, and he has some business that is, maybe it's so capital intensive or what, it's just like, nobody knows that business even exists. Thinking of one specific example, it's like CNC machining, like making physical things out of metal. And so you need like all this equipment, it's super expensive, and then it's localized as well. And so this guy, like, he just has no competition. And he's just been doing the same business, running exactly the same way for whatever, 10, 20 years. That's okay for that guy, but we all want to make money quickly these days. Like, he had to grind for probably a decade before before he got to that position. In the online business world, or anything that's just moving faster, when you say moving faster, that means things are changing faster. And so how are you changing with the times as things change? It's all about where you get your information from and just having other people around you. And again, I'm speaking to myself. This is like a lesson that I need to internalize and learn and be better at. But surrounding yourself with those people who you're all together doing the same thing, more or less with the same purpose, more or less in the same position. That's important. And you're all out there like identifying changes, being the first to see the changes, and then you share it with the group, and then everyone benefits. I don't think that you're really going against the flow and making things more difficult for you. Again, I'm speaking to myself right now. If you don't have that in place, I think.
Do you find even now, have you got a peer group of people that have had exits that are in the same position as you, or is that something that you need?
Right now, I don't actually. And this is sort of this post-exit journey has been an interesting one. That's me personally, where I've gone more into my shell. By default, that's what I do, unless I push myself to get out of my shell. I mean, I'm not very good at maintaining personal connections. And the other reason that led me to go down that pathway of like not really staying connected with other Amazon sellers or other influencers doing things like on YouTube or whatever, was that I really wanted to open up a space in my life, a different space, not with any particular direction at the time. I was like, for example, we spoke, we first communicated like 3 years ago. And then around the time when I was exiting, we had a conversation because we were thinking about, there was a potential like investment going to happen. And I ended up not doing any of that and just like shutting it all off. And it was actually a business idea that I had similar to what Michael's doing now. That was really close to what I wanted to do. But I decided it might be better to try something very different, and rather than just following that same pathway, just take like a random like 90-degree turn and just see what happens. And so that was one of the reasons where I was like, okay, I'm just going to shut, people talking about Amazon, people, whether it's in the online education course, coaching program space, or the e-commerce space. For a period of time, I want to have as little as possible of that, like coming into my awareness, and just to see what happens.
I feel like with one of the motivators for us for the exit, or definitely for myself, is I feel like with a big exit, you're buying time. You're buying the only commodity you can't. This doesn't last forever. And I think having having that big exit and having the capacity just to think about, you have kind of every option available to you now, because you've kind of cracked one side of your life, right? You haven't got the pressure of needing to work anymore, so you can kind of really choose to do what you love. But that's a big motivator for me. That I think I like the game. I feel like I'll be around this game for a long time, but I really want to just have time to think, because right now it feels like it's just 100 miles an hour on multiple fronts. And I like to. That's kind of why I came here. So I came to Central America and wanted to take a bit of a break from. I forced myself to do it. I booked this in January because I knew otherwise I wouldn't come. I think as an entrepreneur, it's easy just to be wrapped up, and I think you can give yourself it's actually in Tim Ferriss's book, you wouldn't have seen it, but a mini retirement. I like the idea of mini retirements throughout my business life. Do you think you do that? Have you started something else and then had an exit? Would you take time between each?
Are you saying for me personally in the future, or like hypothetically?
Yeah, in the future, if you built another business, sold another business, like as you said you might do you think your life pattern would be sprints and then breaks, sprints and breaks, or would it be keep kind of consistent and having that routine that you like?
I've always struggled with direction and purpose, and that was sort of, like starting this conversation. Well, one of the themes has been there's not been an overarching long-term goal. It's just been one step after another on maybe thinking a little bit ahead into the future. And so I think I need those periods to try and like calibrate the compass to take me, maybe it's over here. Maybe it's over here. I spent a lot of time thinking about this. This is like going deep. And it really depends on like how much you enjoy the games that you're playing. And what you said was like it really triggered something, that it is a game. But ultimately everything is a game. Different kinds of games that reward you in different ways, that require more or less of you, or different parts of you. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices in this way, and sometimes you receive this in return. But ultimately it's all a game. And so I don't know. My struggle has been to find the game that I want to play forever. And that's an ongoing struggle. And I think some people, maybe that's not an issue for them. But looking back, and again, that's why one of the reasons why having this conversation, for me personally, introspectively, is very useful, because it allows me to look back and see which games I've been playing and how satisfied has that really been for me at each part in my life. And it's a journey. I don't know. I'm somewhere along that journey right now.
It's definitely a personality trait of entrepreneurs. I'm meeting more and more now that we do. We've got a friend group in Barcelona where we have all run different businesses, but now we're kind of a nice peer group, and it's so introspective all the time. Everyone's trying to optimize their life, and it's that's a trait that we all have. And sometimes I think, would I be happier just being normal and just like having a regular job, not having stress? But I just don't think I'm wired that way. But I'm like, is that happier? What's like, am I going to be, like, my high's going to be higher, or are they just actually, is it better just to be content and just live a regular life?
Maybe. It depends. I can't speak from a position of authority. I'm just learning here. I'm just picking up. But it's some of it comes down to how you're wired, I suppose. I think ultimately we are all seeking contentment. It's the fulfillment of the desire. And I actually think from the entrepreneurs that I've seen, the more successful they are, often it's because they have a bigger hole. So
the YouTube channel, you mentioned you're an introvert by nature and you have to force yourself. I'm not putting words in your mouth. I think I've seen you say this.
It's true.
So you force yourself to kind of go out your comfort zone and do things. Was that the reason behind the YouTube channel? Why did you start it?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the reasons. It's a while back now. It was definitely to do something that I was uncomfortable with. That was the first reason. I did not like, this was the second reason, was that I felt there were a lot of issues. There still are issues today, but at the time there were definitely issues with the other gurus in the space, and just the way that Amazon was being sold. I think it's evolved, but I think that problem is still there today. And I was having real success, and I could see the way that people were talking about it. This was all the way back in 2017 or 2018. And it's just like what was being sold was really not what reality was like if you're an Amazon seller. You know, there wasn't potential to make money, but like why are these people talking about it like this? And so there's sort of this, I don't know what the emotion would be, but like I felt like I had some obligation to, let's not say obligation. I wanted to get out there and actually show it how it is. And I thought that as well, I would probably be rewarded for that, for actually showing things how they are. I just thought that was something inherently good to do, worthwhile doing. So that was
what it in terms of, so you could start the course business. Was that in the back of your mind, or was it you kind of wanted to just help people for your self-fulfillment?
Well, honestly, I think everyone says they started it with no intention of, they started a YouTube channel with no intention of monetizing, but like everyone has some intention of monetizing at the start. I think it's, let's just be honest. Yeah. I think so. Maybe you disagree. That was definitely there of like, hey, if this works well, yeah, like why not? Why wouldn't I be able to make money doing this? What was the question?
Well, so the reason for starting the channel, and then like after you, okay, so after you started, did you gain traction immediately? Your first couple of videos?
Yeah, I think it was pretty quick. It was interesting. Like I wasn't relying on virally, so I had to do a lot of guerrilla marketing, let's say. So I was on Reddit, like replying to people individually and then DMing them and go, hey, by the way, I'm starting a YouTube channel, like you should come check it out. I was doing that in Facebook groups. But I mean, in terms of the traction, like I told myself I was going to do a video a week for 6 months, and then, you know, like if people didn't like the videos, if no one was watching, I could stop after that. And it did work. Was like actually just being who you are and telling your story as it is, but having a story that's worth telling, which is the key part. Is like recognizing that you have that. I mean, maybe if you're a narcissist or something like that, you do that by default. But in terms of coming out of my shell and the comfort zone and being a very introverted person, and shy at times as well, to recognize within myself that actually I was doing something that even back then already was worthy, I thought, of sharing. And I sort of wanted to convince myself of that.
It was also cool. Your life was cool. Like, is objectively, you're saving around the Caribbean, earning money online. That's interesting. It's like inspiring and it's interesting, but it's not like, I think there's any shame in recognizing that that's aspirational for a lot of people, and it's very likely you're going to get eyeballs on that.
You can say that, and like I guess I objectively know it's true, but this is, I say this again and again, but like ultimately all of this for me is just, it's an internal game against myself, of bettering myself, of bettering my weaknesses, you know. And it's still hard to actually like take a compliment. Basically, it's just a personal thing that like the way that I grew up, I'm not good at accepting compliments, or like accepting and seeing things how they are. And yeah, so anyway, like that was true. It was true. So like people started watching and following along, and I don't know how you like originally started watching.
We watched you because you're not going to like this compliment either, to be honest. I take to your face that we were drawn to you because you were honest and you showed your results. That was a massive inspiration for our channel, because we kind of started doing more YouTube when you took a step back, to be honest. It wasn't like we're the new Myles, because we're not handsome enough, I'll be honest. But we thought like there's a gap, and there's not a gap in the market, but there's a lack of honesty in the space. And you showed shopkeeper and showed your results, and we were like, that's perfect. We should do exactly the same. And you could just, I don't know, there's a bit of a kind of a bullshit detector with some people. You could just tell there was just lying to sell courses, whilst you were just honest and truth about what it's like to run a business. And you were quite negative, I thought, in some of your videos, but that was like refreshing. And then we thought, okay, so
negativity is a part of the journey. Absolutely. Well, I mean, not phrasing it as negativity, but like just sharing that's part of it. The hard parts, right? The obstacles, the things you have to get over, the shit parts, basically.
Yeah.
Can I turn this back on you and ask how you've experienced that? So your channel is Honest FBA, and from what I know of you, you're a very honest person. And I do think that space, unless it's changed since I've left it, probably has a lot of those same characteristics. I think it's just something inherent with, you know, having this opportunity that does exist. It is real, and you can make money, and money is what people want to change their lives. Exactly. You know, like type into Google, how to make money online. Why? To live a better life. So it attracts, I think it's always going to attract this level of shadiness or whatever word you want to use. What has that been like for you guys coming into that space and now being part of it while doing it in, again, literally like in an honest way? How does that affect tell me your perspectives on it.
It's been really enjoyable. And when we started our channel and through results, we saw no traction for a long time as well. So, and we didn't have the goal right at the start to, for example, build a course. We knew it was like out there, but it was more, we actually thought we could earn money through AdSense on YouTube, which we only got monetized last month. Taking that,
Congratulations.
The last video I made has got $3 AdSense so far. So flying with that. It's been an odd experience when you get comments of negativity and people are like, you're only doing this because, like, why are you making a video on this? Why can't you, if your business is so good, focus on building the business. Like, how can you have time to do this as well? And it's like, it's two of us for one, and we documenting and sharing. It's fun. The reason the main upside of it, honestly, has been the networking effects of like having something behind you and having a bit of a personal brand. The doors it's open in terms of, that's why I'm sat here now. Not because I DM'd you before we had a channel, but it's people are way more likely to respond to you. You're way more likely to, you kind of see there's a bit more of authority, and it just opens so many doors and to meet smart people and have good conversations. And if that side of it's been the biggest upside, I'd say. Getting like the negative comments, I don't really. Alex is the fiery one of the two of us. People probably know that from watching the channel. He's confrontational by nature. I don't think he wants to be, but he just if he sees something, he'll say it as it is, the kind of guy. And like getting negative comments is a bit. I think it's not healthy, is it, to get a lot of hate, and it's not healthy as well. So it's weird to get a lot of praise from people that you don't know as well. I found that kind of to be a bit.
There's something interesting psychologically where I find anyway, but I think this is a common thing, is if you get one negative comment or one toxic comment, whatever, the negativity of that is much more powerful than the combined positivity of like 10, like, well done, great video type thing. Like there's not much feel good feeling in that, relatively speaking, but there can be a lot of reaction to that negativity of the one negative comment, which makes it I found it quite difficult to like balance that out, and ultimately just sort of trying to become detached from it all.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we've started taking off more recently. I think we're going to have a lot more of this now, so maybe see how you felt with it. I think at the start, I think it's getting over being self-conscious was the main thing. You kind of your friends and family seeing it, I thought that was a bit of a battle, and then there's that kind of tipping point where it's not working, and then the FBA business started going really well, and then people from my school from 15 years ago messaging me saying like, how does this work then? And like, kind of, I bet you kind of laugh that until you're not, and then it's like, okay, I want to learn from you.
Can I ask how you feel about that now? Getting the specifically people that know you in real life from before, let's say and now seeing, like, just knowing that they see this on YouTube or whatever, and however it is that they react, like, how do you feel about that?
It's kind of a compliment now, I'd say. It feels nice to know. It's like a stamp of approval, I think, if something's working. So it's been good in that sense. I'll be honest, a lot of people that reach out, I find it's just like fleeting. They've seen a screenshot of the good sales numbers and they're like, I want to do this, and then I give them some info, and then they don't come back again, surprisingly. But I think I don't know, as I've kind of I moved away to Barcelona from I think that's being like separated from the way you grew up, which obviously you've done as well. I think that actually helps when you're doing something like putting yourself out in public, because you've already built a new life in a way for yourself. So I don't think you feel as judged as you would if you never left. So that's been something that we thought about. But I think now, like, we've seen the scale you can get to on YouTube, but the skill in terms of speaking to a camera, that took a lot of learning. But then doing that then allowed us to build a course, because I was used to speaking to camera, and you can, how to write decent scripts and how to. It's a skill set, in terms of how to transfer knowledge. So, like you did that with Michael. Did you do that when you realized you did it well with Michael? Was that why you then thought, okay, I can apply this to the course that you built?
No, I think it was all happening around about the same time. One didn't come before the other, if that's what you're asking. Like one didn't cause the other. They were sort of happening in parallel.
Right. Okay. Did you? I don't split into back on you again now, but with the YouTube group, you started getting, I presume, a lot of questions in the comments.
Yeah.
And then you built the course. So people, I don't think you see many interviews about and conversations about people that own Amazon courses. Obviously, you don't anymore, but you own an Amazon course, I own an Amazon course. And it's just this huge, as we've touched on already, murky, fake guru kind of area that people look at it that way. What's your kind of overall perception of online education and how to stand out and be kind of honest with it?
First of all, I think it's necessary, like to like you said, learn the skills to be able to talk to a camera and to put yourself out there and to face criticism, because that's a function of putting yourself out there from, being confronted by strangers rather. I think that's just more and more necessary, just the way the world works, and the decreasing importance of formal education and increasing importance of being an individual who can learn autonomously, as in informally, and then also teach others informally. That's just where the world is going. I think that's clear. I think a lot more confusing when AI starts to embed itself into all these things, but it doesn't matter. That's where we're going. So I think it's necessary. I think everybody, no matter what you do, what your story is, aside from Amazon, like, you should just be sharing and learning how to share, not just in a way that feels good for you or is easy for you, but in a way in which you're actually delivering value to somebody. Because there is somebody out there who wants to know what you currently already know, and you just have to share it. But then also the how you share it really matters a lot. So that's one thing which is a big skill set and a very important skill set. In the Amazon space, what do I think about that? What's the question?
Yeah, like what do you think? Like, do you? We spoke before the interview, and we mentioned a couple of names, and you said you had a visceral reaction to it. So how do you, as you've been out the game and now you're back talking to me, bringing back memories, how do you feel about it now? And the fact you were a big player in the space, that you were one of the biggest channels for sure when we were watching it. So did you feel part of that? Did you feel different, like to everyone else?
I always tried to, I mean, again, this is my natural personality, but I always tried to just keep a very narrow focus on what I was doing. At least for most of the time, my Amazon business was always the primary focus, not in terms of hours. Filling YouTube videos and doing all that and taking care of my students and like answering their questions and all that took a lot more time. But financially, it was like neck and neck for a period of time. But I don't think, I could be wrong, but at least for the majority of the time, the primary like financial machine was always Amazon, maybe 90% of the time. And so the rest was just like, that is one of the reasons why I stopped. Like, so not talking about the rest of the space and the shadiness or anything like that, but I mean, it was something that I was attached to. The specific thing that actually caused me to stop completely, stop YouTube. I shut down my course. I stopped making money from it, and just went, I'm done. It was actually when my mum died, or just after, and this was during COVID, and I'd actually just scaled my course up. So I decided to like take it to the next level, or at least like see what it would be like to reach, the next level of success and growth. And again, we were talking off air about like some of these other businesses in the education space that are very successful. And I thought that I wanted to do that. And that means hire a lot of people, hire a team, have, a sales team, do all that sort of stuff, and just get my presence bigger and bigger and sort of saturate the internet and teach everyone about Amazon. And I went a little bit down that pathway. I did actually, like financially speaking, or at least from the success of the course business as a thing, because I had time, I was locked down in COVID. I changed a few things around, and like the business like quadrupled in like a month. So it was just things that I wasn't doing that I was like, okay, well, let's do it this way now. And it was this huge leap up, but also it took a lot more of my time and attention. And so I was in this interesting situation where I was making between both of my business, because both the Amazon business and then the course business, after COVID helped the Amazon business up, boosted it up. I was making whatever it was, like 100K a month in profit in the Amazon business. And then in the course business, it was after scaling up, it's like about the same. And so I just had more money than I knew what to do with. Like my spending habits, this is my place now. Like it's a nice place, but like in general, I don't spend that much money. I just do not need that much money to spend on things. It doesn't give me joy. I've realized that. And so I had all this money. I was working hard on the course side, particularly, again, like value delivery, like taking on new customers and then helping them. And it was taking up all my time. I was really stressed. It was in lockdown. So I was like mentally not in a great place, no free time. And then I got a call from my mom, and she'd been like sick. No, not from COVID, but basically like her health was like declining, and I was on the other side of the world. And this sort of kicked off this like a few kind of like stressful, let's say, or like traumatic months, where it was basically like I was trying to get back to see her before she passed away. And I didn't know that she was really going to pass away until basically like happened quite suddenly. And in that whole process, I was still like making more money than I ever made before, and yet like I was grieving. I was depressed. I was feeling really lost. Like why is there this difference? Money is supposed to be good, making lots of money, being successful is supposed to be good, but I don't feel good. And obviously, there's a reason why. But so I finally, I go back to Australia. I then had to do a 2-week quarantine in the hotel. I don't know, like in Australia, we just had this like super strict lockdown. So I was in isolation in a locked room, like no air, nothing. Like it was not great for my mental state, but it gave me a lot of time to think. And obviously I was grieving. She passed away. I didn't get to see it, but it just put things in like this crystal clear clarity. Like for me personally, like why do I want to take this thing to this next level? Primarily, like the first reason is a selfish reason, which is that I want to be successful, or I want to make money. I want to do this. Secondarily is around helping people. Again, that's the sort of one of the original reasons, which is like, I can come into this space and actually teach it in an authentic way. And I think that that's just a good thing to do, as you guys are doing. But primarily is the ego-based reason. And I think that's very common in educational businesses generally. You do it because it's a great business. You make a lot of money. But what for? I was just sitting there in this hotel room, like, again, with all these sort of like depressed, like negative, anxious thoughts, like waiting to get out, and just thinking like what's it all for, really? My answer was that actually there wasn't really a huge reason to continue doing it. So that's pretty much when I made the decision. I was like, okay, I don't want to take this to the next level. I definitely don't want to have, for example, like I felt quite guilty that the fact that she had passed away, and then I'd been very focused on my businesses. Again, I didn't know she was dying until it was like too late. But I don't regret this, but I definitely think like, geez, like that was a kind of a waste of time. That time could have been spent doing something that was really much more meaningful for me. And so that was the primary reason why I stopped selling my course. But then after that, I was just kind of like, well, this feels good. Like it feels really nice and relaxing. Like, okay, so I immediately lost that income, obviously. I had the Amazon business. And again, all of this is framed from a perspective of what is, pragmatically speaking, financial abundance. Like I don't have high spending habits, and I had high income at that time, very high income, and savings as well. So I didn't need the money. So if I didn't need the money and I didn't enjoy working for the money anymore, like why?
So walking away from a business generating that much cash, like cash flowing, crazy business per month from the course, that's a pretty huge decision. After you stopped doing it, did you miss any aspects of like getting to help people and see it? Did you try to take pleasure from that, or almost more so than growing your own business? Seeing these kind of students like changing people's lives is pretty fulfilling. Did you miss that?
Yes. Yes, I did. And again, all of this is just me taking one blind step after another, and I want this, so I tried this, and then that happens, and it's like, oh, whoops, I didn't know that was gonna, I needed that, or I wanted that at the time. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I really closed myself off. Like I said, I wanted to disconnect from that. This was after the Amazon exit, sorry. And I realized that actually that's a big hole to fill with something, you know, and a lot of parts of it were fulfilling. Having a team was fulfilling. Working with Michael and seeing him grow and helping him to develop was super fulfilling. And then on the course side, like seeing customers, clients, whatever, students become successful. Although I know that the majority of my course customers, I never spoke to them on the level of a long time frame and seeing how they actually develop over time, because I stopped. But like, you know, an Amazon business is like a multi-year journey. And actually every now and then people message me, they're like, hey, Myles, like I just exited. Like I sold my business for, you know, whatever, 300,000, 400,000. I just interviewed Evelyn. We talked about her briefly before this conversation, and she's like, oh, hey, I'm a 7-figure seller now. Like, wow. Like I don't know, like I'm lost in my world. I'm not following your journey. And so there's all these success stories that I don't know about, which is cool. But yeah, that's like, there's just, you do want to be, as someone who, I think it's an innate human thing, actually. I think we all want to be in that position of being able to give, obviously, definitely from our like close family, and being able to support and sort of care for people that we love that are around us. But, you know, that desire, it still applies to just people around you. Like we all want to do, I choose to believe that we all want to do good by each other. And it's only really if something gets in the way or there's some, you know, some temptation or some darker desire that stops us from doing that. But ultimately, I think we're all highly motivated by helping others.
Yeah. So YouTube, you said you're back. What's the plan?
Yeah. I'm doing a little bit of the lean startup, which is around like feedback cycles where you basically don't actually have a final product. So I don't have a final product right now. I definitely do not have some funnel that I'm just like growing. The YouTube channel is not like this top of funnel way to end up doing something at the end here. But I've recognized the broad brushstrokes of the things that I ultimately want more of in my life is human connection. Which is why we're sitting at this table like talking right now, is because it's cool. It feels good. It is value adding to learn from you and to have this discussion, and to hopefully, you know, someone else will actually learn from us sitting here and talking to each other. And I've gone through a lot of shit in the last couple of years, a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff. Again, stuff that I never expected I would go through. And I think I've learned a lot, and I definitely think that there's value to share that. And it's all different things. It's the psychology. It's the what happens when you have money and money doesn't make you happy. Like everyone says that, but to actually go through it and experience it, you learn this like just nuanced view of things that again I just didn't expect. You know, and I've had money for a while, but like it was just on another level. It's really changed my perspective of reality, and I think we ultimately, most of us think we know what we want, but then getting what you want, what you think you want, it's only really then that you actually are able to look back and be like, fuck, was that really worth it? Is that it? Like, was this the thing that I was chasing this whole time? Like, is it really the thing that I wanted? And if so, then you should be happy and content at the end of that. But I think ultimately a lot of us, we don't end up more content after we get the thing we want. So I want to explore that in broad brushstrokes. Because I think ultimately it's about humans feeling good about themselves. I want to feel good about myself. I want you to feel good about yourself. And I think you got to know what's important to you. That's it. So I want to explore that. I am exploring that.
Nice. And I'll ask one final question. If you started Amazon now, today, 2023, do you think you could be as successful, more successful, or less successful?
Wow. Look, it's more competitive. It's a lot more competitive now than it was, as in you just need to know more about business and marketing and doing things more intelligently. Again, like my pathway, stepping out like this, it's like, oh, blind luck here, blind luck there. Like, oh, that was nice. That could have gone wrong, but it went well. And I think you got to walk that pathway a lot more carefully today than I did. But that's okay. You can do it. So the specific things that I would look at improving, like my own weaknesses, if I was doing this today, I mean, are we setting, how hard is this? Like, do I have financial resources? Do I have the experience that I have? Or are we like, scratching all of that?
I'd say you haven't got your Amazon experience. You can be this age and have a bit more knowledge about life in general, but just getting into the game, kind of going in with your same interests, same mindset, but just the game as it is now. Do you think you could crack it?
yes, I would have to dedicate myself more to it than I did when I actually did this myself. I think I would have to be really focused on how I acquire the right knowledge and doing so in a way that's quicker. And basically, I would pay money and I would do things like what you did, like get into people's DMs if you have to, in a way that actually adds value. Don't just go out like trying to take shit from people, but like find out who has that knowledge, talking about mentors and everything, get it in a reliable way, in a way that will work for you. Don't be afraid to invest in that. And I'm not just talking about buying a course, but in general, just being like really committed to the cause of acquiring the knowledge that you will need in order to follow that pathway. Because the knowledge that you need now is a lot higher. The threshold is a lot higher than it was. And so I think if you go into it with if I were to go into this, I would be very conscious of that like, fuck, like I'm going to spend a lot of time and money learning what I need to learn and making mistakes still. I think, I'd probably account for a couple of dud products on a very pragmatic level of like, this first one's probably going to be crap. Like I'd probably do what I did before, which is launch 5 products again at the start. Not 5 necessarily. I launched 5, but like trying different things at the start again, because you're trying to maximize learning knowledge. So whether you're paying for a course, you're paying for mentorship, you are investing more in that learning of like, okay, let's see this product does this. Let's try this product launch method and this one. And all of that is just a larger and larger commitment. So I think the level of commitment is higher, very possible. The return is actually higher today. First of all, the market's much bigger. There's much more demand. And you can sell your business for a lot more today than you could previously. And so it's like the stakes and then the potential returns are higher. So if that's the game that I wanted to play, yeah, you could win at that game.
I feel like you do well. So I feel like it's a pretty safe bet that you're going to be successful in whatever business you do. Mate, I'll wrap it up. Thank you for inviting me into your home. This was awesome. There'll be loads of value in this. You're a much bigger channel, but if you're on our channel, obviously subscribe to Myles's channel. If you're on Myles' channel, please subscribe to Myles.
Subscribe to Honest FBA.
And man, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Pleasure to have you here.